my document. Thank you.
So Chair Jawett?
Here.
Councillor Erb?
Here.
Councillor Galloway?
Here.
Councillor Harris?
I'm here, sorry.
Councillor Jaworski?
Here.
Councillor Kiefer? Councillor McGarry? Chair Redmond? And Councillor Verbanovic. So it looks like we have 5 of you here and 4 absent, so we do have quorum.
Thanks for that, Leah, and I really appreciate it. So I'll look for a motion to commence the meeting. Again, I can't find my agenda that I had. I think I found it in open yesterday. I printed it off because I didn't read through it. So sorry, I don't want to hold anybody up. We'll look for that motion to accept the minutes from the previous meeting.
There are no previous minutes. They go directly to council. So you might want to ask for declarations.
Oh, okay. Okay, any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to, sorry, I can't find, I just printed this yesterday. I can't seem to find the ACDEV meeting.
The next item is delegations, and we don't have 3. Number 3 is patio update from staff.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
I just want to note that Catherine McGarry has now joined the meeting.
Hello, Catherine.
So yes, patio update is the first item on the agenda.
Okay, I should be able to find it.
Okay, so thank you, Madam Chair. We have a full agenda here for you today. We're going to start with a patio update for ACDEV committee. Ryan Mounsey on our team has been leading this initiative on our behalf of the ACDEV team here at the region, and working very closely with the area municipalities, the ACDEV teams, and other staff on supporting extending patios onto streets and the permits for that. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to walk the committee through some of the work that's been happening to date and some of the things that are coming up.
Thank you, Matthew. Madam Chair, committee members, this has been an ongoing project involving many, and what I can update you with today is that there's been 150 outdoor temporary patios approved. That's the collective number in all the townships and the area municipalities and the cities. Of those, Kitchener holds the bulk at 64, followed by Cambridge with 39, Waterloo with 30, and the townships with 17. That's the information we have to date. And what's important to note about this is that these patios fall under what we'll just simply call the emergency order. And with the AGCO and liquor license rules, you can get streamlined approvals to get these temporary patios. Patio is a defined term, and it means not enclosed. So that is our kind of criteria to work with. On the regional road, we have the least amount of temporary patios in regional roads, but this does cover the townships in some locations, their downtown cores. And also there's a master agreement with the city of Waterloo that covers patios there. This is a collaborative effort. It involves the area municipalities, planning, economic development. It also involves our public health team. It involves Minto Schneider and various other staff. So what we're trying to do is develop some common messaging, and we have different roles, different positions in this locally and regionally. But we're trying to develop right now some common messaging that we can share out to the community and for the businesses. And so the patio extensions have been extended from October 31st to January 1st, 2021, end of year. So right now, a lot of our conversation is about winterization, snow clearing, very technical matters that we're all sharing. Through our collaborative teams, we're trying to develop some consistent standards where we can, and we'll be providing more information in the very near future. What I just simply also note is that with Waterloo Region Tourism, Public Health, Best Waterloo Region teams, we do see this as a very fragile time. And what we're trying to do is to provide the maximum amount of facilitation to extend these outdoor patios to the best of our abilities. As noted, the key messages are underway. We have a meeting this Friday, so we're hoping to have some outcomes this Friday on clear direction. And we can start to work towards this end of year extension. And we are reviewing what this means for next year as well, as there's ways to streamline this as a shared community next year. So that's just is a snapshot what we have right now. Personal thanks to all the area municipalities in trying to provide their perspective and their processing. They take the lead on this, and we're a supporting role. And to our public health teams in terms of trying to provide some direction. There is some evolving types of patios, and there's different standards between a not enclosed patio versus an enclosed patio. And we're trying to sort out some of those legislative requirements and public health requirements. So more to follow. I just wanted to provide that update. Thank you, Matthew.
Maybe I'll just add one other item to that, and that is another initiative that we are working in collaboration with the area municipalities and the Waterloo Region Tourism Corporation. Last week, the federal government announced a new program aimed at supporting tourism initiatives and also the food, beverage, restaurant industry across, and these are being delivered, this is being delivered through FedDev Ontario. So it's a fund of about $8 million that's available for municipalities to, I should say, communities to apply to for funding assistance. They have a very quick turnaround on this. That application is due next week. One of the things that this program does support is helping businesses acquire things like patio heaters and tents and cleaning supplies, these types of things. So that is an initiative that is being led and coordinated by the Tourism Corporation. We are supporting that as at the region. One of the points for consideration is looking at potential contributions from the region and area municipalities towards a fund of some sort or a support program to help businesses with the additional costs of that outdoor equipment. And so that is something we're looking at right now. We plan to come back to council with a more detailed request on that, but I did want to provide you with the notice. This is happening. This is also happening it's happening quite quickly right now, and sort of in real time. About a 2-week turnaround for a full application since they gave us notice about it. So we're hoping that we can support that, and we would be coming back to council for approval of a request. So that's ongoing. I wanted to raise that for the committee's awareness and attention at this time, and we'll be following up further on that. Should also just say thanks to our transportation team as well. They've been also, and legal, they've been very helpful in trying to help with the patio effort as well overall. So maybe, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back over to you for any questions that the committee may have.
Sorry, Helen, you're just on mute. Nobody can hear you right now.
Sorry, I didn't click hard enough. So I don't see any hands raised unless I kind of go through. Yeah, there we go. Councillor Galloway, please.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I was just curious, Matthew or Ryan, in regards to the ION and establishments adjacent to the route, have we resolved all the various issues that there once was for the patios associated with those locations? In my observations, there just haven't been as many as appeared to be interested early on. So I'm just curious whether or not there still are some impediments to those.
Matthew, maybe I can take a first crack at this, Madam Chair and Councillor Galloway. The majority of the ION route patios were actually addressed in the City of Waterloo frontage going in uptown. And there's an agreement in process with standards for patios along there. So that's well taken care of and administered by the City of Waterloo. And there's a master licensing agreement that covers that with the city. So that's well taken care of, and we don't foresee any other issues moving forward or that could be managed through an agreement process. There's been very limited uptake on regional roads within the City of Kitchener and City of Cambridge at this moment in time. So we see most of the patios concentrated on the side streets, and we don't foresee at this moment any new emerging issues along the ION LRT at this moment. I just simply note that with the construction work in downtown Cambridge, that without the LRT, ION LRT at this time, is that there may be some growing demands there for next year. And this is why we're in good communication with the City of Cambridge just about processes and agreements. Master's agreements have been put in place to manage all aspects of regional roads and city patios. So I think we're well covered with the tools, and we'll monitor this throughout the year and next year, Councillor Galloway.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Galloway. Is there anyone else who, let me just check, would like to ask a question? Okay, Councillor Branovic.
Thanks, Helen. I just got in on the presentation, but I guess and apologies for that, but on the second last bullet, and maybe it's less of an issue from a regional perspective because of Ryan's last comment, but we've already indicated that we're open to folks continuing through the winter and into spring. Basically, as long as the AGCO continues things, we're open to continuing things from a city perspective. On those that are, in plazas and so on, they're going to need to work with their mall owner if they want to continue through the winter months. But on the ones that are on like King Street and so on, if any of them want to continue, we're open to continuing and working around them from a snow removal if that's what's going to help their businesses continue to thrive. At this point, I'm not aware of any that want to do that, but that may change, as the weeks move forward and some of the other pieces become clearer, including things like heating devices and so on, which are being looked at, as has been noted.
Okay, thanks for that, Barry. Just having a look to see if anybody else has their hand up. I know we have another presentation. How are we rolling? I just want to ask Matthew, how are we rolling this out to make sure that everyone's aware that there's this $8 million fund to assist with some of these precarious needs due to COVID, like the heaters, tents, cleaning supplies, etc.
Yeah, so again, right now, this week, it's been sort of just trying to pull all this together because the federal government just notified communities about this at the end of last week. So I think once we put together, or once led by the Tourism Corporation, once the framework is put together, the application is put together, they're obviously taking into account existing feedback that we've heard from restaurants and businesses throughout the region. They're also pulling on that feedback that's been provided to the regional and area municipal economic development teams. And so they're feeding all of that into creating this framework. Once it's complete, the Tourism Corporation, in collaboration with the region, area municipalities, and other partners, work to get that messaging out. So I can imagine that will happen, start to happen or come together next week. Again, this is due next Tuesday. So it will be in the very near future, and there'll be some coordinated messaging around that.
So Matthew, are you guys going to reach out to the Chambers of Commerce? Did you say that, or just to expedite?
Yeah, I think absolutely. We would look to reach out to all partners, the chambers, BIAs. We'd look to connect with anyone that can help get the message out and help. Depending on what FedDev comes to the table with and how successful an application may be. We would look to everyone to help communicate that message and, make sure that businesses are aware of any funding that might be available.
Okay, and then an overall question I have, I don't know if anybody else does, but so now that we're initiating new protocols all the time, or not all the time, but we're certainly a progressive protocol, a moving target, right? So. And I know that we're looking to bring resources to be able to help public health with this. I think there's going to be, if people see that we're trying to promote this kind of thing, and then there's the other side of it, making sure the public is safe because of the COVID challenges. Do we know how? Do we know how we're going to sort of manage the expectations of both sides of that?
Well, I think we continue to work with public health on the various types of messaging to businesses around safe practices based on the stage that our community's at. And so we're looking to enhance that and continue to work with public health on that. We'll definitely make them aware of the details of an application that goes forward, and then look to, as far as deployment of any program that's set up, we would obviously look to work closely with public health on that process.
Okay, thanks for that. I appreciate it. So do you want to, it looks like you've got more to continue on with? Or
yeah, so if it's all right with you, Madam Chair, if there's no other questions, we can move on to the next agenda item.
I hope I haven't missed anyone, but I don't see any hands waving.
Okay.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Okay. So agenda item is our aviation and aerospace opportunities assessment, and providing this committee with an update. If you'll recall, we did an update at our last committee meeting on the work that's been done since the end of 2019. We continue to do that work. We've finished the final phase of the project, and we wanted to provide this committee with an update today on that work. A couple things to note for this committee. This over the last 8 to 10 months, we've been able to have over 50 interviews with local businesses in the aviation and aerospace sector, our post-secondary institutions. We've been able to connect with companies outside of the region as well to understand what are some of the key elements that they look for when looking to make an investment in a community. And so it's been fairly fruitful in that sense, where we've been able to identify really what the opportunity might be for Waterloo Region. If you'll notice, we've changed the title from Aviation and Aerospace Strategy to Aviation and Aerospace Opportunities Assessment. One of the things that we heard from businesses is that this is the first time work like this is being done in the region. And so it's really been a discovery process for us to understand what the assets are here, who's in this space, how can we build on this. And so businesses were saying sort of like, this is to them, this is like laying the foundation to really help build this sector. And so that's where we've made this switch based on input from business as to calling it an opportunities assessment. And then I think based on some of the recommendations that are coming out of this work, we can look to what's the longer term strategy as next steps. One of the things that, so I'll just quickly highlight that we have been, as a reminder, working with PricewaterhouseCoopers as our consultant on this and helping us through navigate this opportunities assessment work. At the last meeting, you'll recall I did focus in on 4 strategic priorities that have been bubbling to the top of this work. There is, really, after doing all of these interviews and looking at the industry provincially, nationally, in North America and globally, given what our assets are here, there is an opportunity to be an innovation leader in the aviation and aerospace sector. We're obviously that thrives on collaboration, and that is one of the things that business told us they would appreciate, is creating a collaborative ecosystem here to foster that aviation and aerospace cluster. Talented, companies are looking more and more for where they can go for talent. Manufacturing being such a big base in our region, a lot of business talked about how we can coordinate with their post-secondary institutions, for example, to cultivate a talented workforce. And then finding, I'll say really, when I talked about collaboration amongst partners, it's how do we coordinate that? How do we support various efforts like research and development, various industry collaborations, leveraging things like our startup sector here? How do we leverage all of that into growing the aviation and aerospace sector in Waterloo region? So those were 4 priorities that we left off at our last meeting. One of the things that we've spent the last couple months really working on is understanding what the potential economic impact of building this sector out would be for Waterloo region. And so joining us today is our PricewaterhouseCoopers colleagues who have been helping us with this work. And I'm going to turn it over now to them to sort of walk through the work that they've been doing and share what their assessment is as to what that potential economic impact could be for Waterloo region. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Richard. Hopefully you are on the call. There you go.
Yeah, thank you very much, Matthew. Just trying to get my video working. I hope that's working now for everyone.
Yes.
And thank you, Madam Chair and committee members, for the opportunity to present today. As Matthew said, so I just introduce myself as well. My name's Richard Snook, Director at PricewaterhouseCoopers, sitting in our economics team based in Toronto. As Matthew introduced there, the part of the work we're going to be talking about today really builds upon the opportunity assessment that was presented previously. So the whole previous strand of work that Matthew kind of talked through at a high level there was about understanding what are the strategic priorities, which are the 4 boxes shown on the left of this slide. And then this final step that we've been doing over the last couple of months is to try and, where possible, to say, so given those priorities, if that is achieved, what could you expect the impact to be on the region in terms of GDP and job creation in particular? So we've been doing some work around that. Now, as you'll see on this slide, not all of the 4 strategic priorities lend themselves well to be quantified. So what we've done is develop three scenarios for the top 3, where we felt there was a way that could be or was a scenario that could be quantified to get to that estimate of impact. The 4th one, unfortunately, we did not or were not able to create a scenario, because that was more about just making the existing ecosystem work slightly better. So there wasn't a clear way we could define that. So I'll talk through each of the three economic scenarios that we assessed in turn, and I suggest probably capture any questions that you have, and we can deal with those at the end. So perhaps if we can jump to the next slide, Matthew. So just the first scenario that we looked at was the question of what would happen if we attracted a major tier 1 aerospace supplier to Waterloo region. Just in terms of the general approach we took for each of these scenarios, we effectively did two things to generate the estimates that we've come up with. Firstly, we held a couple of interviews with prospective investors, just to get a sense of if these investments were made, what could they look like, what could be the specifics of the activities that could be based here. And then, using that guidance from the interviews, we used a benchmarking approach. So as you can see on this map, we gathered data on a number of sites around North America of existing Tier 1 aerospace and used those to generate some quantitative estimates of what's a reasonable range you could expect in terms of the size of this site for both employees and revenue. And you can see that on the right hand side of this slide. So for the Tier 1 suppliers, what we heard was that the kind of most likely activity to come would be manufacturing facilities, advanced manufacturing facilities that are focused on developing large aerostructure assemblies. So it'd be manufacturing things like wings, fuselage, nose cones of aeroplanes, and bodies. Largely focused on narrow body and regional jets, which are the key components of the North American market. That was seen as by far the most likely activity that could be captured here. And when we looked at the data on various sites that are located both in Canada and the US, the ranges that we developed for this were that the site level employees could be of the range of 600 to 1,200 if you did attract this Tier 1 supplier. And the revenue of that facility per year would be between $170 million and $360 million. And those were the key inputs we then used within our economic model to estimate wider economic effects and to estimate GDP, which I'll come to at the end. So that was the core approach for looking at the Tier 1 supplier. If we then flick to the next slide, I'll just go through the second scenario, which was, again, the question of what if we attract a major maintenance, repair and overhaul provider to Waterloo Airport. Again, the interviews on this one suggested that of the various types of maintenance, repair and overhaul, or MRO for short, broadly there's three main types, of which two they felt could be relatively likely to attract or to bring here. So you generally have what they call line maintenance, which is the everyday maintenance of jet aircraft, passenger jet aircraft and cargo aircraft. And then you have the heavy maintenance, which would be major overhauls, so things like a cargo to passenger conversion, or perhaps replacement of all the seats or entertainment systems. So a major job that would take weeks to complete. Or and the third type was recycling of out of commission aircrafts, where you take out the components that are still and then use those and recycle them into other aircraft. So the discussions we had suggested that the second two were most likely to be attracted to Waterloo Airport. And obviously this kind of operation would need to sit right on the airport, because the planes would fly in and be worked on there. And which was a similar approach, looking at benchmarks across Canada and across the US for similar types of facilities that did those two operations. And as you can see from the ones on the list, there's certainly not as many, because generally these activities are quite concentrated. You only need a relatively smaller number of sites, and they're also relatively smaller than the Tier 1 suppliers that we looked at on the previous slide. So here we estimated a reasonable range of the size of this site. If a company could be attracted here, would be between 100 and 575 employees, and between 35 million and 200 million of annual revenue. So then I'll just jump on to the next slide, if I may. And then the third quantified scenario we looked at in line with the 3 areas in the opportunity assessment, was for the potential to attract an aerospace-focused technology hub. So this would be, in essence, the Communitech of aerospace, with a very clear sector focus. And you'd have a large number of small startup companies who would be serving the aerospace sector and selling into the aerospace sector and working in partnership with larger companies. This one's slightly more difficult because, as I'm sure you can imagine, the number of sites which you can classify as aerospace technology hubs is relatively small. As you can see on this chart, we identified a number, in particular around Seattle, around the Boeing facilities, Huntsville down in the US, Montreal, and Toulouse. Most of these are not pure play aerospace. So probably the one that's closest to a pure aerospace startup and technology hub is McCalla in Toulouse, which is obviously centered around the main Airbus industrial facility in the south of France. So we used that as our benchmark in this case. So effectively developed estimates that said, if you take the existing startup ecosystem based around Toulouse, scale that down to reflect that the overall size of the aerospace cluster in Toulouse is larger than Waterloo. So obviously with Airbus there, it's an extremely large cluster. It's currently 4 or 5 times larger than the cluster around Waterloo. And then we use that to develop our benchmark of the possible economic impact of having such a cluster here. And that was in essence the approach taken for the 3rd benchmark that was developed. And then this slide is just on general methodology. So what I've talked about before I show you the kind of numbers that came out of this analysis. What I've shown you so far is what we call the direct impacts, which, as you can see, is the top box on that impact modeling line there. So this is developing the estimates of the jobs, revenue, GDP of the companies that are operating. So it'd be the tier 1 supplier itself or the MRO company itself. We also wanted to think about wider economic impacts. So we used multiplier analysis and input-output modeling to estimate indirect and induced impacts associated with these companies. So just to kind of explain what those are, if any of you aren't familiar with them. If we take the tier 1 example, if you had a major tier 1 supplier based in Waterloo, they would then spend a lot of money on their supply chain. They'd be purchasing things like aluminum, all sorts of metals, other inputs that they need to do their job. That then drives further economic activity up the supply chain. So that's what we call the indirect impacts. The induced is effectively the downstream element as opposed to the upstream. So the employees that work at the tier 1 supplier would spend money in the local economy on things like retail, hospitality, also those things. More so before the COVID crisis, obviously, but there's all sorts of downstream spending that results from having all those extra employees in the area, which drives additional economic impact. And that's what we call the induced impact. And what we did was calculate the sum of those 3, the direct, indirect, and induced for both jobs and GDP. And that's what we have on the next slide. So if we just flick to those. Perfect. So these are the results we've come up with from the analysis I just described. As you can see, they are still in draft format, but I think they're reasonably firm at this point. I'll just focus on the ones in bold, which are the total GDP and total jobs. So we estimated for the tier 1 supplier that the potential GDP gain could be between $125 million and $550 million a year. That's the combined value of the direct, indirect, induced effects, and jobs potentially between 1,125 and just under 5,000 jobs at that facility, factoring in the indirect and induced effects. and those are permanent jobs that will be ongoing as long as that site's in operation. Then the MRO, slightly smaller impacts, but still significant. So there we estimated the low end of the range for total GDP, $40 million per year, rising up to $230 million per year, and total jobs of between 300 and 1,660. And then finally, the potential for having this startup-focused or aerospace-focused startup hub, we estimated the economic value of that could be between $30 million and $55 million per year, and the jobs between 290 and 490. Again, those are totals which factor in the direct, indirect, and induced effects that I spoke about before. So that, I believe, is the summary. So I think if we perhaps open there for questions.
Yeah, just give me a second to check. I mean, there was a lot of information there. I'm not seeing any questions, so please carry on, unless anybody wants to wave. I'm not seeing it on the chat.
So, Madam Chair, if I can just add a comment, and that is, so as I said, this is our last phase of the work, and so what we will be doing we'd like to bring forward a report to the next Economic Development Committee meeting, summarizing key findings from the entire scope of work, and talk about potential next steps and how we work with industry on some of the recommendations that are coming out of this. There are quite a bit of numbers in the slides that we've put in front of you today, and that you might need some time to digest that. So, we can speak to any questions that do come up later. I think we just wanted to show this is really based, again, on what we've heard from industry that exists here right now. Industry has told us the benefits to supply chain, to the overall growing the sector here of attracting a tier 1 or an OEM-sized company, how we can leverage the regional asset being the airport to support some of this work, and if we were to bring more MRO here, what does that mean? And then finally, it's well known of our startup sector here. So how do we really coordinate the startup sector through maybe a center of excellence of some sort? How do we make that linkage between these different types of companies, tier 1s, MROs, and startups? How do we make that connection? So based on that input we heard from businesses, we did this economic modeling. And the other thing too that's really important in that supply chain conversation is we've done extensive work with the post-secondaries here on mapping all of their existing programs that could support the growth in the aviation and aerospace sector. And so they are already, our University of Waterloo, for example, is already doing quite a bit with major companies like Lockheed Martin to support research and development. Waterloo has an annual defense forum right now. So there's a lot of work that's already being done, but they can help to grow this sector. And so that as well was all taken into account when we did this economic impact modeling.
Okay, so Matt, Councillor Kiefer has a question, but I just also want to ask, because there are so many numbers and so much information here, do we have a copy of this in the file?
Yes, this is this is in your package of information, but we will also have a complete report that will be following for Economic Development Committee and Council. Yes, that will be coming when the final report is prepared, which will provide more context on the background.
And so some of this must follow the success that, I mean, without sounding lofty, that Pearson followed to be able to grow to the capacity that it's at, right? Some of the main tenants are sort of in here?
Richard, are you able to sort of speak to any assessment with the other, like the MRO particularly, and the assessment you did on other comparable airports?
Yeah, I think we've certainly got some of the companies in the benchmarks from around Pearson. Just on the MRO side specifically, we did not include Pearson-based MRO companies because we were trying to find airports with similar levels of air traffic movements to use as our comparators. So that's because obviously that's one important driver of the line MRO activity that I was talking about earlier. So we have included, I believe, in the tier 1 benchmarking, but not in the MRO.
Okay, Councillor Kiefer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You asked one question that I was going to ask, and or one of two questions I was going to ask. And the first one was, of course, do we have a copy of this? And Matthew graciously said we do. So that takes care of that question. And Matthew, the second question I have is that in Richard's presentation there and yours, I guess, you showed a lot of companies that are involved in the aerospace business and airplane business as such. Have we talked to? I'm sure you have. When you did your research, do you talk to local companies that we've got right here in Waterloo Region, like Hero, DevTech, and Shimco, companies like that? Or have you spoken to them about this at all, or is that coming?
Yes, well, we have, as I mentioned at the start, we've actually talked to over 50 local companies as part of this work. We are still, between now and when we finalize the report, we are still in the process of undertaking additional interviews. You know, we've been talking to some startups, established companies here. So we still have a few weeks ahead of us of interviews, and we'll look to sort of capture that in the final report. But very much this has been based on all of the input. Majority of our discussions have been, over 90% of our discussions have been with local companies. Maybe I'll just turn it over to Ryan to maybe highlight a couple of those companies that we've interviewed specifically.
Thanks, Matthew, and I'm sorry for coming on late.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matthew, and great question, Councillor Kiefer, for you, Madam Chair. Just a note on the range of companies. We try to group them by sectors and operations. So some of the larger manufacturing would include companies like Magellan, as an example, is one of our larger manufacturing companies here locally. They've been very helpful and insightful. In terms of automation, Eclipse Automation has been very insightful as well. On the labs and testing side of things, Cambridge Testing Materials and NTS are two good examples. Certainly when you look at the startups and small business side, we spend a lot of time there. And so companies like, I would suggest Milterra, that's a Cambridge company that does rapid prototyping. And so the various range of companies that we're working with Nav, Blue, and Waterloo on the software side, certainly on the advanced emerging technologies, which is a core strength here. There's Darwin AI. So there's a whole series of companies that we've reached out to and more as well. So I think as we kind of get through this process, and maybe we can get up to 60 or 70 companies, this is a very good snapshot. The startup programs, Velocity in particular, and the Accelerator Center have been very insightful on this, and collaborations with Communitech with their insights. Our post-secondary roundtables have been very insightful as well in terms of linking talent with business and how to support existing businesses. So we're trying to do a better job with moving forward with more marketing and profile material, but as well as connecting market demands and job growth with the post-secondary institutions. So we've developed some profile sheets that will be distributed to the companies to show the different range of activity and investment and applied research. You know, there's apprenticeship programs that could be applied as well. So in working with PwC, our various interviews, and there's a much broader range as well there. There's probably a couple of large ones that we'll want to connect with in the next month or two to close this off. But I'd say it's a fair representation of the entire industry now.
Thanks, Ryan.
Barry, you're up now, I think.
Yep, thanks.
Yep.
Just want to say, I mean, impressed by the body of work, but also think that it's come at a very timely point in many ways, because while the industry is sort of hit what I think we could arguably say is rock bottom in many ways, certainly from a tourism point of view. The beauty about it is there's only one place to go from here, and that's back up, which is always a good thing when you're talking about aircraft anyway. I think it also is focusing on us to leverage this asset that we have, the airport, recognize that we have lots of abilities through the college, the universities, and other partners already in the community, but others who can grow in this space, and we're a good place to grow. And focusing on a new area when some of our existing clusters, because of the shift to work from home, to work at home, and so on, may see, and I think it's still too early to tell, but I think we may see some adjusting happening in some of our clusters we've been focusing on, let's say over the past half decade to decade, and sort of growing more so in this new cluster will ensure that we continue to have a vibrant, well-rounded regional economy, but also trying to demonstrate that we're still the place to be in terms of technology and innovation. So if you are thinking about rejigging any of your current companies in your current cluster, you may want to think twice. So I'm really excited to see this body of work here.
Thanks for that. Much appreciated. Barry, is there anybody else? I'm sorry, I don't see anybody on the list. I'm going to go through the hands on the screens now. Okay. I guess we should carry on then.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our next agenda item is we wanted to provide Economic Development Committee with an update on some of our the work that we've been involved with from a talent development standpoint. And so one of the things that is in our regional corporate strategic plan is to support the development of a talent attraction and retention strategy. And so our team has been working on a framework for that, and we will be returning to the next Economic Development Committee with a report on a process forward on how we work collaboratively with area municipalities and other community industry partners on building out that talent attraction and retention strategy. But there have been a lot of ongoing initiatives in the community, and we wanted to make you aware of some of those initiatives. You've probably seen a few in the media, but we do right now obviously are focused on not only just attraction and retention, but we are also now focusing on reskilling and looking at the impacts of COVID on our workforce here, and how do we support impacted workers transition their careers or get back into the workforce. So there are various initiatives that are underway right now that we are supporting. We are, for example, the Future of Work and Learning Coalition approached us about participating in an event that is supported by Plum, a local company, to help impacted workers identify skill sets that they can then use to help get back into the workforce. And so in October, we will be putting on a webinar in partnership with a number of different community partners to support workers. So those are types of initiatives that are underway right now. Two other areas that we are supporting are an initiative that Communitech has been on the H-1B visa campaign. And also, I did mention Future of Work and Learning, but that is another initiative that the region is actively participating in. So I've asked Saj Jamal and Simon Chin to join us today to speak a little bit to each of those initiatives. They're very, it's a lot of current activity that's happening there that it would be good for this committee to be aware of. So I'm going to turn it over to Saj at this point to start talking about the H-1B visa campaign. And Saj, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can share your slides here.
Thanks, Matthew. And good afternoon, Madam Chair and the rest of the committee members. I just wanted to update you on an initiative that we're doing, in typical Communitech fashion of just rallying together and putting Waterloo Region on the map. And so I'll just share a bit of a deck, and some of you may have seen these things, some of you may not. So I'm just going to ask for a thumbs up that you can see the blue slide. All right. So basically, this campaign started with asking the question, if you're in the US right now and you're holding a visa, what if your visa gets canceled? What if I lose my job and health insurance? And it's quite a compelling statement because, as we know what's going on in the US, it's uncertain times for people that hold these visas. And then the second problem is, obviously we help our community of tech with customers, capital, and talent. And the talent aspect is they have a gap. They need high-skilled workers to continue to grow. And so we had this opportunity. I'm just going to quickly run through why now. So on June 22nd, the man in the corner of the screen there did what he does best and kind of, talked about how he's going to put a ban on H-1B visas, but it also included L1, H-2B, and J visa holders. And at that time, we kind of sat down as a leadership team at Communitech and said, you know what? The H-1B visa holders, if you're not familiar with it, is one of the hardest visas of the planet to get. They have 75,000 or 755,000 people apply to it every year from around the world. And you have to have a company willing to wait a year to hire you. And so these are the smartest folks in the world that tend to be the ones that create the companies and create the jobs. And so our thinking was our companies need senior talent. These people have made the decision to move west, and we wanted to let them know that there's a tech ecosystem north that they could come to and they could come work for them. So our target audience were primarily non-Canadian and non-US citizens who had this status in the US, and secondarily Canadian expats who are living in the US. The people that have left, maybe went to University of Waterloo, went down the States and stayed there. And those are our audiences. And we targeted the top US tech clusters, which are New York, Boston, Austin, Texas, and San Francisco. The action was very simple. In this uncertainty, take a look, learn that there's an ecosystem up here. There are jobs and there's a lifestyle that you can have that is better than what you have right now. And the channels we did was looking the strange thing about today is the ad market is actually quite suppressed right now. The only people buying ads are the Republican Party and the Democrat Party in the US. So we have this interesting time that we could actually leverage cost and get in front of people and essentially use the same tactics. So we primarily use Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and then I will share some results of how we did it. And the question that always comes up is like, well, don't we have Canadians to fill these jobs? And I wanted to point out that right now, I just got this from 2 days ago, we have 464 companies that have 1,485 open roles. And a lot of these roles are jobs that if there was somebody to fill it, we would have them, but there aren't. The second part of this thing is that for each high-tech job in a city, there's tons of reports on this. They actually create more jobs outside of that. And what we find is particularly H-1B visa holders, they can range up to 16 times the jobs. For the one job, they create jobs. And so that's one of the aspects. And then the federal government just released a report saying that, just here on the right, that the STEM talent that we have in our country, 44% come from immigrants, which is kind of a big number. So you can see that we just don't have the supply in the country. That's why we're going to the US for it. And so we took a two-pronged approach, and people always ask, well, why billboards, right? And so I'll tell you why billboards. So billboards were targeted for media, because guess what? People are at home right now. They're not actually traveling outside. They're not going to places. They're not going down the highway. So we put up basically 8 billboards going from Santa Clara to San Francisco. And they were just like this, asking the question, what if my visa gets canceled? What if that happens? And that worked. The media got attentions. We had the San Francisco Chronicle right away call us up and saying, okay, what are you guys doing? Happening? That moved to ABC News. It went to CNBC, and I'll share some of those results. And so now we were getting the earned media of people watching their trusted news channels as to, look, there's an option. The second part of the campaign was literally showing up in their feeds. So we had a very, very targeted campaign that went directly to people that were immigrants, that had the visa, or their families, that said, what if I lose my job? What if the Republicans win the election? It was just playing up on the uncertainty. And from that, driving them to a landing page. And we took the key areas. So in San Francisco and New York City is where we did the billboards. And in New York City, we did one in Times Square, basically across from the NASDAQ sign. It's quite a prominent spot. Normally, we could not have afforded this. But again, the market right now is advertisers are also looking for, hey, will you advertise in Times Square? Because there's nobody there. And so we're doing that for the media. Let's get back here. And so the destination, we're saying for talent, play on the uncertainty, but take the responsible action and take a look at the other option. And we created a landing page, and it's just communitech.ca/Canada. Everything drives to that page. And when you get there, we're basically telling you, we want you, we have jobs in tech, and we have a lifestyle. And we're also talking to companies. We're talking to our companies to say, we have methods to hire these people. And one of the things that's an opportunity for us right now is because of remote work, they don't have to move here to start working for a company. So we have created a program called Communitech Outposts. So Communitech has set up entities in the US that allow us to hire on behalf of a company and provide them benefits and the rest of it. So it's a very low cost way for our tech companies or startup, any company really, to, if you're hiring less than 10 people in that state, you can do it through us. And it's very cost effective. They don't have to set up an entity, and they have a presence in that country right away. And that will lead into start working for the company and then using the global talent stream, move here over time. And the global talent stream, if you're not familiar with it, it was something that was actually started by Communitech, Chris Plunkett, and has kind of led that challenge about 5 years ago about how do we make it easier for high skilled talent to get here. And that process now takes 2 weeks once that person's identified. So we have 2 mechanisms: work remote for the company and move here. And for the US international companies, why not for the startups, start up here with startup visa, but if you're a company, why not open a satellite office or relocate here? And the interesting thing is, so these are the 3 aspects that we're talking about, and just hearing some of the earlier presentations of trying to lure an aircraft or whatever, this is the kind of thing that does shape it. And I'll share some conversations we had with the New York consulate the Canadian consulate in New York that is specifically looking to tell companies to locate in Canada, more particular in Ontario, because what they're finding is international companies want to still be in New York and New Jersey, but they can't keep the talent. The people don't want to move to New York and New Jersey. So what if they were to locate in a place just north of New York and New Jersey and offer the same things? This deck I've provided to you guys. So if you want to look up the full results and the photos and the videos, you will have it. And every story that's been published is in there, and every photo and editorial piece that's been taken there. And I just want to quickly just go over some of the results. So, how did it work? Did the media prong work? Well, right off the bat, we've got a ton of pickup, and national media and North American media. And if we're trying to, put Waterloo Region on the map, this is putting us on the map. And so you can see what we did, but this idea of 31 million traditional media impressions in key markets is a big one, where I even had a friend that lives in Wilmington, North Carolina, home of Joe Biden, sent me a note saying, "Is that your CEO on CNBC today?" Right? And so it was actually hitting places that you wouldn't expect that we had. And one of the interesting aspects that happened with the producers from the show, ABC and CNBC both said, okay, tell us more about this Waterloo region. Is there other things that we can talk about? You seem like a pretty bold and aggressive kind of organization that's just kind of hitting when you need to hit. And so that was good news, and we want to take more of our stories and pass them down through these outlets. So we have a relationship. We had never been in Narcity before. We're there now. We have a connection with them. LinkedIn actually used the story for 4 days. It was the profile story across all of LinkedIn in North America. So it was the top one. So we had 14 million people that would have seen why Waterloo region, why Canada. And so these go on. I'm just showing you some examples of different stories that happen throughout. The messaging now that we provided to the actual talent, basically primarily on mobile. We did a little bit of desktop. We had 3 video units, basically, of how we compel them. And then we used YouTube and just the typical things. The key messages were, what if I lose my job and health insurance? What if the US election affects my visa status? And what if my visa is canceled? And all 3 worked quite well. And I'm just going to show you what happened in the first week. So this was August 4th to August 9th. And I just want to point this out because it actually got bigger after the first week. And then I'll show you the results as of the end of September. So right off the bat, we had close to 2,000 users originating from the IP coming to the landing page and saying, exploring this place. We had sections on why Waterloo and what's going on. So we're getting the people there. And so it was good to see the initial traction. But at the end of the day, we're trying to get names of people that want to work for companies and matching them with the companies. That's the ultimate goal. The top performing creative, we had 3 videos made, and they're basically 20-second clips, and they're on the landing page. There's 3 versions of it. There's, if you know Applyboard, Martin Pecuniary, who is the founder of Applyboard, we have a clip of him saying he's so happy that he moved to Waterloo, right? And then it's really, that's just it. And he couldn't think of a better place, that he told his twin brothers to come, and he's just created a company that's valued at $2 billion. And you just think of, you see GDP and income or all these numbers. That's what a high skilled immigrant can do, right? For the economy. Lindsay Farlow is a US based, she's from San Francisco, that made the move here and was at Communitech in the Ontario's Digital Innovation Lab, and now runs the CIO for digital services. But she tells a story about, she heard all these stories about Waterloo and of Canada, and they were true. And that's her story. And then we have a third one with Lindsay, or with Hillary Hartley. That was Hillary Hartley. Lindsay's was the story of somebody that went to UW, went to the US, and then came back. So basically hitting all 3 aspects of somebody that has left, somebody that's never been here, and somebody that's founded from the US. These are just some more numbers, but in the deck that I sent you, they're quite good numbers. So whenever we see these kinds of engagements, the typical rate is, if you put a bunch of impressions out there, a 1% is quite good that people will click through. We were getting 2.7 as we're working. So it's resonating with the audience. They're showing up, and now we're at the stage of where will people make the move. And if we look at through the 8 weeks, again, the rates are high. The number of people have come. So we have 13,128 unique clicks to the site of people looking for it. And then we have people signing up to a list to basically say, I want to know more. That's kind of where we're at right now. And so the number there's 82 people that have the H-1B visa holders. And again, sounds like a small number, but I can assure you that is a very high number. And something just happened this morning was that Trump just made an announcement that he's tightening it even more. And so we actually reacted again today, and we are going harder in those markets, because now it's becoming real for these people. Like you can think about moving, you can contemplate, do the responsible thing, but I think now we're going to see a real uptick in this, because even if the election goes the Democrats' way, there's still this uncertainty in the US. And do you really want to be a second-class citizen in a country when you have much more to offer the world? We're playing up on that. I think one of the outcomes is we've put Waterloo Region on the map again. I think we have lots of reasons that we've done it in the past, and we have to just keep that momentum going. The meeting we had with the Canada's Consul General, they're basically at Grand Central Station. They have an office there, a fairly large office with about 140 employees. Not only did they see the ads, they have taken pictures of the billboard in Times Square, and they've been working really hard on trying to convince people especially from the universities there, from Yale and Columbia, of like, look to Canada. This campaign, they've told us, is really helping get those people to seriously look at us as an option. And like I mentioned earlier, the foreign direct investment of the companies that are looking to relocate or open offices in the US, they now can point them up to us from the talent point of view. And I think one of the other things is the tech and innovation hubs across Canada are all on board with this. We didn't alienate anybody. We are putting more attention on Waterloo Region because we're the ones running the campaign. And I think one of the great things is we've kind of become the de facto center of tech for the nation. And I think that's an important thing moving forward, that, you know, we have Toronto, we have Montreal, we have Vancouver. There's always the NTV, but I love that in tech that we've created Waterloo Region as the place, and then they look at Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, and Waterloo Region first. And I'm just going to pass it over to Simon here in a second. But this whole idea that, you know, we're helping people, and when I'm getting the shots, we have a photographer and a videographer that's down in New York City that's taking these photos for us. Just when you look at the ads, so if you see this "You Only Live Once" and this calm, and it's like, how do we change the world? There's this continuous flag that's blowing up there that's saying, "We want you," and it talks about what we want to do. It's just there, and we were able to negotiate a rate that has this going till December. Like, this is up 24/7 till December, and so it's a great kind of beacon. And when you go to that URL, it takes us right to Waterloo Region. And I will maybe before I pass it over to Simon, is there any questions on what I've said so far? I've shared a lot, but
yeah, give me a second to check on that for sure. Are we also dealing with the premise that, I mean, I've always heard from some business owners that they have 1 foot in either side of the border, depending on what happens with government. So, you know, are we being realistic in expecting that, you know, business could move both ways, actually?
You know, it's interesting that you said they very much can, but I think right now, just the form, the way the U.S. is right now, it's mostly the uncertainty. We have a more stable environment. So if you're going to choose one in this current environment, we have that. And it was one of the things, because we did a similar campaign in 2016. Didn't have the same effect. There's a lot of inertia saying, you know, if I'm going to do something, I want it to be in Canada. And I think just it's our global standing and just the way we do things. Well, we're not perfect, but we're way, way better than what's going on down there.
And I can appreciate that. Mayor Verbanovic, you're up.
Thanks, Helen, and Saj, great to see you back at Communitech.
Yeah.
The great presentation and an interesting one. It's actually come up in conversations several times over the past week or so, and it's sort of this. I find myself torn because one side of me is saying, okay, I want Trump to lose for the sake of the world. The other side of me is Mayor of Kitchener going like, I actually want him to win because I think it helps us in terms of our economic development. And I think, you know, what you've outlined today just proves it. But I guess my question to you is, you know, all of this was more true pre-pandemic. In some ways, it's more true even during pandemic, but in other ways, there's more choice for people now. You know, whether they're companies located here in our own community or companies anywhere, you know, could look here for talent, could look in India for talent, you know, and can start moving around more so. So I'm just wondering, you know, from your perspective, you know, how is the pandemic playing into all this, and where are the areas of concern that we should focus our energies on?
Yeah, that's a great question. The interesting thing is, so we're for the tech sector, it's primarily borderless. You can work anywhere. Most of the software works are happening, but the other thing that's happening is the thickening of borders. You can't get to places. So you have this dilemma. So COVID has introduced this weirdness of you can't get somewhere, but you can hire from anywhere. I think the strength that we have, the opportunity we have, is Canada has always been regarded as very highly regarded worldwide. It's a place to go, and it becomes the better West. It really, I think that's the piece we have to really lean hard on. You know, there is the risk that people from here could work for companies elsewhere, right? That very much the risk, but where are those companies located? And so part of the thing is, you know, yes, you could work for an American company, but do you really want to if they choose to still stay there in the current environment? And yes, the election could change things, but there's still, I wouldn't say half, but 40% of the population that thinks the way the current president does, and that shifts mentality. And I think it used to be strictly on the dollars. What can I make? What opportunities do I have? And all of a sudden, COVID is introduced. Well, I actually care about my life, and I care about the people that I share my life with, and for my communities that I live in. And that aspect, I think COVID has really kind of ramped up the lifestyle part of decision making. And one of the things we're uncovering is we're going to be doing a lot more stories. And as the media outlets have asked us as well, is give us specific examples of people that have made the move during COVID. And so you'll start to see those come out as part of this campaign as well, which humanize the whole thing. And I think that's what COVID has done. It's really kind of made it real. And this idea, like when you see on this picture on the slide, you only live once. What are you going to do? Where are you going to be? And I think we can see some good economic gains from that, but we have to be cognizant that we could lose people the same way.
Sure, and I guess the second part though is we think of what Communitech does, what we're trying to do in our individual municipalities in terms of attracting companies and businesses. Do you see that there's any risk to us potentially? And this is an issue where our role would be more advocacy with someone like the federal government, but we run the risk of companies looking at things like whether it's Turks and Caicos, Cayman Islands, places that are known as tax havens. I can set up my company there and have people working in Waterloo region and wherever, and still sort of run my company, but not necessarily getting some of that corporate tax benefit that's coming to the country right now, and indirectly to us as well.
Yeah, we haven't dug into that, but it's a great point. You could see that happening, and I think that's probably one of the risks that maybe, Matthew, I'm going to put your way. So as we start working on this talent strategy thing, what are the risks? I mean, and the downfalls of doing this kind of thing. But as you can imagine, this was meant to fill a gap that we have right now. But I totally hear you. And as you say that, it makes me, it's that classic, you want to think further and you have to, but I don't think COVID has taught us deal with the now, deal with we're just because tomorrow, who knows what's up tomorrow, but you're exactly right.
Yeah. So no, I mean, kudos to you guys. Keep this going. And I think that bigger question, we should even engage, between the region and the area municipalities and community partners, because I think it's one where as the federal government starts looking at the longer term and economic stimulus and so on, I think part of that may actually need to look at how do we provide incentives that for companies to actually come here and locate here. We're not getting their tax dollars now anyway, so actually let us be that tax haven they come to, quite frankly, and giving them breaks. But that's going to take new thinking in Ottawa and maybe us to push some of that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I'm going to keep my presentation going, and Simon's going to
just before you do, unfortunately, sorry, Councillor Galloway's been very patiently waiting. Can we allow him his question, please? Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course.
And I also want to warn everyone that we have an airport master plan meeting at 3:00, and I'm not so sure. I'm thinking the pace is accommodating that. So we'll let Councillor Galloway go ahead, and then we'll move forward. Thank you very much, Saj. Excellent presentation. Go ahead, Councillor Galloway.
I can't hear him.
You're on mute, Tom. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, there we
It's
go.
okay.
Sorry about that. Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Saj, for the presentation. Very interesting, and glad that Communitech has undertaken this initiative, and it seems to be paying off. Two quick questions. With all the advertising, billboard, and otherwise south of the border, and then the exposure you've had on American media, has there been any pushback from some of the players down there, maybe some of the high-tech companies who don't want to lose some of these individuals, or has it been primarily supportive?
It's primarily supportive. We've had some pushback from like the San Francisco. There's a Chamber of Commerce, and there's an organization that supports similar to Communitech in the Valley. That's kind of like, hey, you know what? They don't really have an argument against it, but they're basically saying, you know what, this will pass. Continue to stay here. That's what they're doing right now. So that's been really the only one, and a tiny bit of don't we have Canadians that fill the jobs. Those have been the two aspects that have come up, but generally, I think this is that whole, Canadians being the nice guys. They're actually happy to see us being a little bit more bold. It's always been the knock against us, right? So this whole sorry not sorry kind of attitude. So far so good.
You should put the sorry on the billboards at the bottom.
That's right.
The other question was, and I forget, it was 68 or 86 kind of bona fide leads that you have created so far. Are they mostly expats or are they international?
Mostly international, and that's again because we were specifically targeting that H-1B visa. So if you were an expat Canadian, you wouldn't have an H-1B visa. You would have a different kind of visa.
Understand that. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll just pass it over to Simon now. So on what we're actually doing with the companies.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll skip through this piece of it, Saj. I think just given the time, and maybe go through the future of work piece if that time allows.
Yep.
Okay. What if you go off and then I can share a screen as well?
Yeah. Let me just figure this out here. Just 1 second. Share. There we go.
All right.
Okay.
So just going to do a check. Screens are good? Yep. Okay. So thanks for the opportunity. And what I'm going to cover over the next few minutes, because I'm cognizant of time, is just provide you with a bit of an overview of the Future of Work and Learning Coalition, that work that we've been doing over the past several months with a bunch of community stakeholders. I'll give you a little bit of a background just to kind of do a refresher, talk a little bit about what we're working on, some accomplishments we've had over the course of the last 6 months, and then kind of where we are going forward. This, you can see there's a number of logos. This is effectively the organizations that have partnered with Communitech to start having a conversation around the future of work and how we can work together to start shaping that future together. Just let me go. So this conversation actually, just a bit of background, this conversation actually started back in 2019. Communitech was having conversations with community partners around, what's the next thing we need to be considering as we, see our economy begin to digitize and innovation be kind of at the forefront. And what a number of the partners started talking about was around essentially talent attraction. How do we make sure from a skilling perspective that we've got folks who are in our current workforce? How do you make sure that we help them keep pace with change? And then again, how do we actually attract the talent we need to be able to fuel our region? And so, we decided in 2019 to really pilot a concept of how do we actually work together across sectors to help create awareness and help tackle common challenges as it relates to the future of work. Because at that point in time, there was a few companies thinking about it, but it wasn't widespread. And the challenge of the evolving workplace is across all of our organizations. We all have employees. So in November of 2019, those 19 different organizations that you saw the logos of before said, you know what, let's try piloting a year's worth of activities where we work together to help shape, create awareness around the future of work within our region and start a process of change that we quite frankly thought would take 5 or 10 years to happen. But obviously with the impacts of COVID in March, a number of the aspects around the future of work have been accelerated. And so it's been actually quite timely that we've been working on this, and cross-sectoral approach from our perspective is more important now than ever. Just to give you a sense, we had Deloitte do a bit of a scan. There isn't a region in Canada, a handful of regions across North America and the world that are actually collaborating in a consortium coalition manner across sectors around the future of work. So it's just something for us to consider as we think about our region and just that collaborative DNA that we think about. The other ones, just to give you a sense, are like Columbus, Ohio, Singapore. Those are some of the Scandinavian countries. They are kind of thinking about this. So we feel like we're leading in this respect. We've been doing this again for a number of months. What have we really learned? And I think it's just to share with you some of the learnings. So one is, there are organizations talking about the future of work, but in general, they're talking in silos, and it's very challenging to solve this across the board. There's not really one organization that can actually solve for this. Pace of change is accelerating. For the organizations that actually said they wanted to collaborate, they didn't really have a centralized place to go. So Communitech said, why don't we try to take that role and try to bring the ecosystem together? This is obviously a national, if not global challenge, but there are obviously regional and sectoral differences. We actually pre-COVID had two communities, Halifax and Windsor, approach us after hearing about the work that we were doing and saying, how can we replicate this community-based model in our regions? And so we actually did a couple of community events with them prior to COVID happening. What we've learned is that, with the pace of change, we actually need more collaboration across these sectors to really drive change. It would be helpful if we had a common playbook that the different sectors could use to actually approach how do we evolve the workplace. There needs to be a lot of piloting that needs to happen, because as we talked about, the future is very uncertain now. So, how do we actually co-create new models? How do we test and pilot different ways of remote working, as an example, or working in a remote hybrid manner where we're accustomed to very accustomed to in-person building of teams, but we don't really have the muscles or the practices to be able to do that in a virtual and hybrid world. And then there's obviously a policy element as well that we think we can influence through conversations at the various levels of government. In terms of what are some of the priorities that we've been tackling, so here are some of the common themes that came up when we started working with our stakeholders. And then we've kind of focused on general work streams. One is from a thematic standpoint, how do we actually create more adoption of work integrated learning? So this is co-op, internships, et cetera. Obviously, we're very with the University of Waterloo, but we want to be able to increase adoption, particularly for small to medium-sized businesses. Reskilling and upskilling, especially of our mid-career workers, is very important. We have a lot of people who have worked in a more traditional environment. How do we actually help them with the digital skills they need to be able to continue to keep pace with the change that we're seeing? Workforce expectations are changing dramatically. So how do we actually ensure, speaking about talent attraction, how do we ensure that we actually have our companies have the most progressive workplace practices so that we can actually attract the best talent? And then freelancing is one that we started to dabble in, thinking about, particularly now in a remote world. There's a growing cohort of freelancers. How do we support them with a sustainable and fulfilling career? Those are kind of general priorities that we've seen. In terms of work stream, there's three. One is really around creating awareness and education around the need for change as it relates to the future of work. There's some research and benchmarking that I'll talk a little bit about in terms of projects that we're doing, and then actually piloting some pilot projects to create an impact. In terms of accomplishment, just to give you a sense of some of the organizations. Sorry, there's just a bit of feedback. I'm not sure if that's me or if that's keep going. Okay, so in terms of accomplishments, just to want to give you a sense of the breadth, we've seen a really overwhelming response from the community. So we've engaged over 200 companies within our community in our webinars and our events, over 2,500 attendees. We run monthly webinars on various topics around the future of work. We're getting anywhere between 500 to 700 registrations for each of those monthly events. They're centered around things like reskilling, changing preferences in workplace, et cetera. And then we've also started to publish several research white papers as well related to the topic area. So I'll kind of go through what some of those things are. In terms of what's next over the next 6 months, a couple of things. Matthew mentioned one of the events that we're running in collaboration with Plum, the City of Kitchener, and Waterloo Region, and it's really around retooling yourself in the jobs of the future. So starting to talk to talent, place talent about thinking about their skills in a much more broad manner versus specific experience. What are those? Helping them understand what are some of those transferable skills that you might need to make a transition from industry to another. We have some plans around helping employers also think that way as well. So again, a bit around that change management piece. In November, Conestoga College is, as part of their membership in the coalition, is facilitating a webinar series for student readiness. And this is not just for Conestoga students, this is for Conestoga College, UW, and Laurier students. And the theme of the webinar series is really around future readiness, helping them understand what are the things they need from a skill set standpoint to be more nimble and adaptable for the future. In January and March, a couple of things just to highlight. One is we've been working with our municipal, well, actually all our stakeholders, but really with the municipal active folks, as well as the region, to start building out an initial scorecard to help communities understand what are the domains and aspects required to be a future-ready community. So what are some of the indicators we should be looking at? What are some of the things that we should be measuring to understand how ready our region is, including our organizations, our academic institutions, et cetera, for the future of work? And so this research project is being led by the University of Waterloo and Laurier, and we're taking a collaborative approach by co-creating that scorecard with the coalition partners that I highlighted earlier. The other one project that I would highlight is we received provincial funding from the Ministry of Labor to pilot a project focused on mid-career individuals, on helping them upskill and reskill on areas like communications and sales. These are very, identified as high in demand skills for transferring from one industry to another. So we're running that pilot with Wilfrid Laurier. Effectively, what we're doing is taking your typical longer programs and condensing them into shorter bursts of learning through boot camp style, short bursts of half day, even a half day, a couple hours of learning, and then taking that and applying it back to their workplaces to develop communications and sales skills, to see how we can actually learn different forms of learning versus having people go back and, do a 7 to 10 night class, et cetera. So trying to create learning that's more in the flow of work is the focus of that pilot. Is in flight right now. There's participants from the region and the municipalities who have sponsored employees to go to that. And so we'll be publishing our learnings in March. In March, we plan to have a summit to kind of share the work that we've been doing with the broader community, engage the broader community in the conversation in the March timeframe. So that just gives you a bit of a sense of what we're doing from a future work standpoint. If you're interested in learning more, you can learn more by visiting the Communitech site. But hopefully that gives you a sense of some of the activities that we're doing. I think the key takeaways from this is this group of organizations are all trying to find a way to work together and share what they're respectively doing around the workplace to help ensure their workplaces are continuing to be progressive, and then sharing that as much as possible with the community so that we can actually help our overall community think about what they need to be able to prepare their workplaces for the future. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions from the work we're doing from the future of work and learning.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Simon. Great presentation. Chair Redmond.
Thank you. It was a great presentation, and I've been lurking in the background for most of it. Simon, when you talked about the upgrading in midlife career, I know I was at a funding announcement at Conestoga College, and President Tibbetts talked about micro-credentials. Is that the same thing?
Yes, it is. And that announcement that you were at was the announcement of the funding that we received for that particular project, yes.
Sorry, seeing no questions, we'll carry on then. I believe we're at the Air Matrix pilot with Alex. Is he here? Hi, Alex. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Simon and Saj. Alex, are you here?
Hi, yes.
Perfect.
Hear me okay? Great.
Please proceed.
Thank you, everyone. I'll try and be very speedy as well, keeping in mind time. I am Alexandra McCalla. I'm one of the co-founders and the COO of a company called Air Matrix, Canadian startup. We enable cities to take control of their skies while accelerating commercialization of drone use cases. So I'd like to show a quick two-minute video, give an overview of what we do to set the stage, and then I'll run through the Region of Waterloo project. So let me just share.
And through you, Madam Chair, I guess while Alex, just to give some additional context, we work with a number of smart city companies, and Airmatrix has been one of these startup tech companies that has approached us about piloting their technology here. So we've been in conversations with Airmatrix about their drone project, and it's something we thought they are as responding to a Transport Canada RFP on the use of drones, and part of that is looking at the municipal interaction with drones. As the future will no doubt have more we'll see more drones in the sky. Transport Canada is looking at how that's managed and regulated, and where the municipal role is in that. So this pilot will feed into that as well, and I'll let Alex talk more about that in her presentation, but a little bit of context on the Airmatrix project for the committee.
Yes, thank you, Matthew. Okay, here we go.
Our daily lives move fast, but faster has left us overcrowded. Congestion slows down the things we really need and brings up the things we don't. Our roads need a break, and the answer is up. Drones are becoming a major transport system. Within 5 years, there will be millions of drone flights per day around the world. We're at a similar place with drones as we were at the start of the 20th century with cars, so the next step is to build the roads. Airmatrix is that infrastructure technology. In the same way city planners use grid systems to build surface laneways and traffic management systems, Airmatrix gives enterprises and governments a layered grid system by building millimeter-precise highways in the sky. This precision enables safe navigation through dense environments, while algorithms manage intersections and provide optimal 3D routes. Traffic control operators can easily monitor and manage the entire system remotely from a simple-to-use application. There are positive environmental, economic, and societal impacts too. A new transport system alleviates road congestion, leading to less air pollution, faster and better access to emergency services, and efficient city transit. With proper infrastructure, we can prioritize time-sensitive medical emergencies like organ delivery, have faster first responses to fire and crime, and provide safe and quick delivery services for goods and people. In addition, Airmatrix gives local governments a new economic engine, enabling toll collection and thus creating a brand new revenue stream for them. Imagine, instead of worrying about the hordes of drones that are coming, Airmatrix can help your city create order out of the oncoming chaos. To learn more, contact us at info@airmatrix.ca. Our journey tomorrow starts by building the roads today.
So we always find that the video helps explain what would take a little bit longer with words, but that is what we do at Airmatrix. And I'm just going to present. Can everyone see? Great. And we have been partnered with the Region of Waterloo and various other stakeholders, which I'll get into, to really have a pilot that shows drone traffic managers services and is able to help Transport Canada in the next phase as they work towards a nationally unified drone traffic management system. So as you saw in the video, drone adoption is really accelerating with environmental, economic, and societal impacts. But what we've seen also with COVID is that there's been an uptick even more of accelerated drone usage and desire for infrastructure. You can think of contactless delivery, making sure prepared infrastructure is in place ahead of time. And that's really where drone operations and traffic management piece really comes in, to enable that interoperability of multiple different use cases with commercial and public benefit. So that's why cities need to be remapped for autonomous drones. And that's precisely what we do with our proprietary Precise technology. And with that, we're able to provide the platform for the usage of that grid. A little bit about Air Matrix, Air Matrix accomplishments. So we are a regulatory influencer, I would say, here and abroad. We sit on working groups with the Standards Council of Canada, which reflects back to the International Standards Organization. And also, more importantly, we've been working with Transport Canada for the past 2 years on a small action team on drone traffic management. As part of that team, we helped develop the roadmap, as I mentioned, towards National Traffic Management System, and what are the different parts and different phases that will go alongside that. As a startup, we backed by Communitech, Mars, and DMZ. We actually won the Fierce Founders Award from Communitech when we were getting our start. And we're speaker at many industry-leading conferences, both here in Canada and actually in Australia and all around the world. We're also, as I can see on the picture on the right, selected as one of the 10 entrepreneurs for a roundtable with the Prime Minister on entrepreneurship in this COVID era. And we're connected with their outreach department, and they're set up for once this pilot project becomes public to support and back that. So that's exciting as well. So what really is the objective of the trial? It was to, and excuse me for reading, but to take leadership position to develop a live drone ecosystem that encompasses all the critical stakeholders, and we test real use cases in a controlled environment to ensure risk mitigation. Here is our list of strategic partners. As you can see, we're engaged with the regulator, national and local air traffic control, industry groups around drone flight safety, the region of Waterloo, and then actual industry customers and industry operators and hardware providers. To note, in terms of region of Waterloo specific, we have the University of Waterloo School of Pharmacy as a customer who have already charted out future phases with us and growing their interest there. And also FLIR number 10, which is actually the new name acquired of a Waterloo-based hardware, drone hardware company, Aerion Labs, which I'm sure some of you will be aware of. So as I said in the objective, we really have an end-to-end ecosystem, and we're collaborating and bringing all these different stakeholders together. You can see here that we've got the flow from a trial site to us building a grid, the end users with actual use cases, to integrating directly with drone hardware companies, one of them being Waterloo-based, because of our specific offering. And then our autonomous traffic management, where we're partnered with telco providers, operators, and additional other drone hardware. So why the region of Waterloo? Apart from the fact that you're great, there's really distinct advantage to doing this with the region of Waterloo, and Transport Canada also understands this, is that there's 3 suitable mixed environments, the rural, urban, and airport, which really makes it the place to be for attracting industries and live drone operational testing. As you all know, it's reinforcing the reputation as a preeminent technology hub, and importantly, what we're doing is setting a grid by which multiple phases and other operations can take place. And this grid is really a city asset to manage and enhance and attract industry, but also not leave it to the giants to come and take over, which we're seeing happen in some places in the US. So diving a bit deeper into the phase 1 commercial use cases, as I mentioned, we have the University of Waterloo School of Pharmacy with one of their partner pharmacies in the region, Hogan Pharmacy Group, and they will be able to deliver payloads of different sizes and weights and consistencies to both a long-term care facility in the Kitchener region and also to a resident. This is the first phase of their research and studies that are going to be published. So we're really excited to work with the School of Pharmacy. Second, we have Rogers, which is really looking to support growth in the area and look at how 5G can benefit from this, but also have the ability to collect signal strength along these routes that will be continually used. And then last, we have Hydro One, who will be leveraging a utility infrastructure inspection, and they'll be using a certain feature of our application to be able to block that off and do inspection via drone. The cost is usually 20 times that if you think of manned pole-to-pole and things like that. So this is a very strategic initiative for Hydro One as well. So we designed the trial really focusing on customers and phasing it out, safety and risk mitigation. For phase 1, we're operating under Part 9 Advanced Operations Regulations, which may not mean much to the people here, but this is how we collaborate and have got approval from Transport Canada. On the right, you'll see all the details that fall into that operations. So it's understanding existing regulations with experienced, licensed, and seasoned pilot and top-notch hardware. On the left, you'll see our grid for this first phase. So Kitchener is the focus here, and the blue routes are going to be our first flights with School of Pharmacy coming up very soon. Again, just going over regulation and safety has been a priority of ours. We have a dedicated Transport Canada resource that has been given to us to help us go over and double, triple check everything. So we're meeting all the requirements, and we've also done additional risk mitigation on top of that in terms of how we've chosen our routes and how we've gone about with coverage. We already have a lot of other very interesting companies and use cases in the logistics space, as well as even more in the healthcare, who we've been talking to and very excited for future phases. So as I expressed at the beginning, this is really setting the infrastructure for the ability of additional testing and having a test bed that will really set the standard for all of what Transport Canada wants to roll out nationally. And to reiterate what Matthew said, this work has been going on at the federal level for 2 years now or plus, that 2 years that we've been involved. And really now part of their key mandate is how do we engage municipalities? This is not, 1,000 feet in the air traffic control, commercial air traffic. It is really airspace that impacts our cities. And this is really, and our municipalities. So this is really important that we're engaging with and making sure it's bringing the right industry partners from the region and outside to support. So we're really excited to continue working with the region of Waterloo, and thank you so much for the opportunity to present to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Can you hang around for a little minute here? We do have a few questions. I think we have at least, I know of one. Councillor Kiefer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Carl.
Okay. Alexandra, thanks for that presentation. That's great stuff, neat stuff. And I know you referenced the cities all the time, but I know you really mean the region of Waterloo, because we do have townships as well. And, I just wish that we were part of phase 1 as well in the rest of the region, But here in Cambridge, we're used to phase 2. That's another story. Anyways, I just want to say that we have a drone that is being utilized by our Waterloo Regional Police, and it for sure it's a great thing, and it's a time saver, it's a money saver, and it's a life saver. So I can foresee in your whole company here the future that this could be a good thing, providing time, money, even jobs for that matter. So I really appreciate it, Alexandria. It's a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. And we find it really important to build the infrastructure because you have the ability to prioritize public use cases like, you know, the police and things like that. And School of Pharmacy have already tagged some locations in Cambridge, so don't worry, we're coming.
Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilor McGarry.
Thank you very much. This is music to my ears. I'm quite delighted. And in my background, in my previous role, I met with Transport Canada several times in Ottawa and with the minister to really push the regulations on allowing drones a wider usage, not even just with you know, different government agencies, but certainly some of the other commercial uses that they could bring forward. I mean, there's just so many uses to them. So I can't be more excited about this. So I understand now, Councillor Kiefer, no surprise here, asked the question I wanted to about potential sites in Cambridge. But could I just ask about the actual committee work that you're doing with Transport Canada? Do you have sort of an idea of who else sits on that advisory committee at that level?
Yeah, so our direct resource who's part of the Drone Center of Excellence who's been provided to us is a fellow called Sandeep. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. But in terms of the action team who we've been working with, it's chaired by Ryan Johnson, who is the RPAS task force leader, and second by Chris, I would have to, I can't remember his name, but I can sort of share it afterwards, who's the policy lead. And
Caccione?
Then on the NAV Canada side.
Chris Caccione?
No.
Sort of like Caccione? No? Okay. And it doesn't matter there.
Yeah. On the NAV Canada side, though, however, it's Alan Chapman, who collaborates with Transport, with Ryan Johnson on the task force from the NAV Canada perspective.
That's fantastic. So they are talking about expanding the agencies or the groups that can use drones in certain regulated circumstances. That's great.
Yes, exactly. Okay. And part of the data from these trials and others is using to form that policy, which is set to go out for review in 2021.
Okay, that's exactly what I wanted to know. That's fantastic news.
Oh,
you're muted, Helen. You're muted.
All right, thank you, Alex. I wasn't sure. Do we call you Alex or Alexandra, or do we just pick one when you're in trouble, or how does that work?
Exactly that. Just like my mother, yes.
Thank you very much. That's a great presentation. I had visions of all kinds of drones banging into each other up there, so that's going to be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're on to the number 5 of the agenda items, job sites challenge updates. Matthew, are we back to you?
That's back to me, Madam Chair.
Okay.
We wanted to, we brought forward a report to Economic Development Committee. It was probably about 2 meetings ago now. And as part of that, we highlighted the provincial government's job sites challenge. And the job sites challenge was, I'm just going to do a screen share here. So the Job Sites Challenge, it was launched by the Ontario government back at the end of 2019. It was really looking for a way to identify lands across the province that could be used to attract large-scale manufacturing sites. So if you recall, one of the things that we did was we partnered with the City of Cambridge, Township of Woolwich, Waterloo EDC, a number of partners listed on this slide, but we partnered to submit an application to the province focusing on the east side lands. and surrounding properties. So that process was delayed due to COVID. So we actually made our formal submission at the end of July. We were notified. It's a multi-phased review process. We were notified by the province, actually yesterday, I believe, that we have gone through the first phase of that review process. The province will be reaching out to us in the coming week to talk about next steps in the review process. And that had originally included things like a site visit, but obviously changes will be made due to COVID. But this process continues forward, and we do hope at the next meeting in November that we're hoping to have of ECDEV committee that will be able to provide a more comprehensive update on feedback from the province through this process. I think we have, again, we have been working with a number of partners as listed on this slide here in the putting this property together and making it marketable to international large-scale investors. So we'll be coming back, Madam Chair, at the next meeting with hopefully a much more comprehensive update after we get some feedback from the province. And that kind of leads into the next agenda item, which I will turn over to Rod on the east side lands.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. So I was, I thought it would be good to give you a brief overview of where we are with the east side lands and connect a number of the dots that the committee may not be aware of. Matthew, are you able to let me share my screen, or do you want to share the drawing of the map yourself?
Whatever works for you, Rod. You can. I've stopped sharing, so if you'd like to share your screen, you can do that. Or if it's easier for me, you let me know.
Okay, I'll share my screen. Can you see that?
Yep.
All right. So just to give you a brief overview, and I realized, Chair, that we are 9 minutes from the next meeting. So I'll be very quick here. By way of an update, the City of Cambridge is moving aggressively with its partners, Intermarket and Hoop, to see the development of the core infrastructure that is a sanitary trunk and the pumping station at Freeport Creek, which is, can you see my arrow as I'm drawing on the map? It's at the south end of this larger, south end of the map, bottom end. No? Okay. So the area in red, the area outlined in red, is the area that is inside of the countryside line, and a good portion of that is within the urban area, not all of it, of course. The pipe that's the sanitary trunk that's under construction right now is designed in the fullness of time to serve the entire area bounded by the red line. So this is a very large and very significant area in the region of Waterloo. That the first phase of that pipe will go up to has actually been constructed already up to the intersection with Allendale Road. The next stage will be up to Middle Block Street, and then over to Fountain Street on both Allendale and Middle Block. And then from there, the trunk is expected to turn north and travel up to Kossuth and Fountain Street intersection in the fullness of time. The design work for that chunk of the project is not yet complete. So the employment land that is being facilitated by this infrastructure includes the Intermarket IP Park project of 54 hectares and the iPort development of 121 hectares. And then as the infrastructure is constructed across Middle Block over to Fountain Street, it will also provide an opportunity for the development of the provincial lands being managed by Infrastructure Ontario. And that land area within the urban boundary is 116 hectares. So in total, the infrastructure in the next 3 years will provide core services to approximately 720 acres of land, 292 hectares. Not to mention, of course, the residential land that's being constructed, which was a subject of our now Regional Official Plan Amendment number 2, between Middle Block and Fairway Road, Kossuth. So the reason why I'm bringing this to your attention is to note that the airport is obviously a major feature of the center of this area, and much of the land that the airport occupies will be reserved for airport use exclusively. So it is not a high density area for future employment, but a number of properties adjacent to the and actually owned by the region adjacent to the airport are actually well suited to facilitate the development of that aerospace cluster, which Matthew and PwC gave an overview earlier. So the airport is a strategic asset in the middle of that area that will be serviced by the sanitary trunk that's now under construction. And then if you go further north, you will see at the northern end the future GO station, which has been contemplated by the EA for Metrolinx. Metrolinx is actually planning the construction of a passing lane that will ultimately provide service, direct rail access to that GO station. If that project is approved by Treasury Board in the near future, construction on that passing lane and the associated infrastructure could commence as early as next year. The design work is complete for that project. So one of the things that I think is important about this collection of this overview map is the fact that at the top of the east side lands, which will be serviced by that sanitary trunk, we have the GO station. In the center, we have the airport with a location for a future terminal building when it's required. An opportunity for the Ottawa Street connection to the city of Kitchener across the Grand River, which intersects at Menno Street and Fountain Street, and then ultimately could connect directly to potential future terminal location if and when we need it. And then if we travel further south along Fountain, we can see a community node at Town Center, at Middle Block and Fountain Street, which will provide services for this new neighborhood and the industrial area to the south. And then further south, you can see that Fountain Street ultimately connects to Preston and the future Ion station at Preston. So Fountain Street, I just want to plant this seed in your mind that Fountain Street is actually an arterial that has at the south end an Ion LRT station, and at the north end a GO station, making it an extremely important tool for providing access to a large area of future development. This is a map that I think I'd like you to keep in your mind as you're contemplating how some of these various pieces fit together in terms of a large city building project, which is going to be facilitated by that sanitary trunk, which Cambridge is currently constructing. So that's in a nutshell what I had in mind. I see I'm within 1 minute of the end of this meeting, Chair Jowett. So over to you.
Rod, that was a great review. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. Actually, the entire meeting was a lot of really good information and good news and good work being done. So thanks everybody for contributing today. We don't have any information or correspondence. Do I see any other business from anyone? I do not. So I'd like a motion to adjourn, please. Thank you, Barry and Catherine. All those in favor? On to the next Zoom meeting.